Welcome to the Seattle Investors Club podcast with Julie Clark and Joe Bauer, where we share the nuts and bolts of real estate investing from our 20-plus years in the industry. Sit back, relax, listen, and immediately take action. Are you ready? Here we go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Seattle Investors Club podcast. Today, this is Julie Clark leading the show. My partner, Joe Bauer, is with us in spirit and in chat, but his audio is not working well. So you guys just got me today and our awesome guest, Mitch Stephen, who's going to join us here and jump on in a second. But first of all, welcome. Again, this is the nuts and bolts of real estate investing, our awesome podcast here with Seattle Investors Club. So, hey, everybody, what's up? Joe, I think, is often, what are you in, North or South Dakota, Joe? He's typing in a chat. He's in South Dakota, and Mitch and I were joking that he's in some Indian sweat lodge out there. We don't know what he's doing, but his audio is not working. He's either hanging off a cliff or right now they have him strapped down to an ant pile. That goes on. They pour honey on him, and then that goes on for a little while, and then they send him out into the woods with like nothing but a pocket knife for about 6 months, and then if he lives, he comes back and he's a member of the tribe. There you go. If there's any, that is something that Joe would probably put himself, he'll record it. If you guys are watching, you guys know Joe's a marketing guy. He says he's near the Wind Cave NP. What's NP with the honey and pocket knife? I don't know what NP means, but Joe's on
National Park. Everyone knows that.
Park.
Everyone knows that, Julie. That means National
sorry.
Park. Everyone knows that.
Well, that's what you get, Mitch, when you're sitting in your kitchen and your partner's off traveling the national parks around the country. You get a little stupid here, but awesome. Well, I'm going to jump right in today. I think we thank you guys all for listening today. We have a spectacular guest on our podcast today, somebody that I've been hounding on Joe to reach out to and try and get on this podcast and educate us, and hopefully at some point come on and visit us over here in Seattle and host one of our meetings at Seattle Investors Club. But today we have Mitch Stephen on the podcast, who is a very experienced real estate investor. I think many of you listening already know who Mitch is. So this is going to be a real treat for us today. He is also the author of a 3-book series, My Life in 1,000 Houses series. So it's a series of books, and Mitch is going to tell us more about that today in the podcast. He, of course, is a real estate educator. I'm sure most of you already know that. A coach, and he himself also has a podcast. Don't you, Mitch? What's the name of your podcast?
It's the REInvestorSummit.com podcast. So RE Investor Summit is the podcast, but you can get there at REInvestorSummit.com.
Awesome. And then you also have several websites. Is there any website in particular that you use as your main your main website? I know you have a whole bunch of them. But
well, the main one is 1000houses.com or 1000houses.com. And there's tabs there to find my books or tabs there for free stuff. I have a ton of free stuff, webinars, hour and 45-minute recording of how my group coaching sessions go, so you can kind of listen in and hear how that goes. But all kinds of stuff there. People say I give away the farm, and that's just fine with me.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna circle up when we get towards the end of the podcast. We're gonna give some more details about all that stuff and where people can reach you and engage with you even further. But before we do that, let's just kick it off with a simple question, or maybe not, or maybe it won't be so simple, but just tell us, what's your backstory? Who's Mitch Stephen? How'd you get started in real estate investing and coaching and being an author? Let us know a little bit about the history of you, the guy with 2 first names.
The guy with 2 first names. Well, actually, none of it was planned or foreseen. I didn't plan to be here. I don't know. I failed at everything else in the world, so the last thing left to try was real estate investing, because I had failed at everything else. I always managed to keep my good name. I always managed to keep my good credit, but I fell on my face in a lot of businesses. I have a stack of business cards somewhere about 6 inches tall, and they all I was excited when I started those businesses, and I was not so excited when I shut them down. But it took me till I was about 36 to find what I wanted to do. Until then, I wasn't downtrodden or anything, but I was living pretty much paycheck to paycheck, more or less. And then something tragic happened. I got into real estate investing because I accidentally bought a rent house. And then I accidentally made more money on the rent house than I did all year at my job, which says one of two things. Either it was a really good rent house or I had a really crappy job. And I had a really crappy job is what it was. But I made more in the rent house than I made at my job for the year. So I started to think, well, maybe I better look into this a little bit. Read a book called Nothing Down by Robert Allen, who had the audacity to suggest that I could buy real estate with no money. And I had so much no money that I figured I could buy the whole town as broke as I was. So I went out and it took me 6 years to really understand the concept in my heart. You know what I'm saying? I read that book and I understood you. I mean, I could read English and I knew that he was saying you didn't need money to make money, but it took me a little while to own it in my heart. And again, what happened is I accidentally just took one of the things he said, never let the deal die on your side of the table kind of thing. And someone presented me with a fourplex and I didn't have any money, and I just made them an offer that I could live with, which was I'll take it and I can't have any payments for a year. And they said yes. And that was then that's when the light bulb went off. That's what Robert's talking about. I don't have any money.
You don't get what you don't ask for, right?
Right. And then, so I did about 1,500 houses. I mean, my first year full time, I did 45 houses. I did 65 houses my second year. I did 150 houses my third year. This was in a whole different time. It was in a time when you could get in the classifieds if you wanted to buy a house, and by 2:00 in the afternoon, you'd have a house under contract and it was over. Right. And if you really screwed up, you'd buy 2 or 3 houses in one day, and you'd be wondering how the hell you're going to pay for them. But it's much different today. A lot more competition, but that's how I got started.
And where are you? You're out of what? San Antonio or
San Antonio, Texas? Yeah, San Antonio.
And do you currently, and have you always done all your investing in San Antonio?
I went outside. I went to Houston and Corpus and tried to open up offices there, and then just figured out that there was more houses in San Antonio than I was ever going to be able to buy, and everyone's culture in government and local government, it's all different. And I went down to Corpus and I bought a bunch of houses real cheap. A lot of them needed roofs, but I missed the roof estimate by $8,000 because they need hurricane straps down there. I didn't even know how to spell hurricane. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I got you.
So then something tragic happened, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time. Later on, my doctors, who are my investors for decades, would tell me. They were also authors, but they're the kind of authors that get paid like $150,000 in advance to write a book. So I called them up one day. Well, I was actually getting a checkup because my doctor, he likes to do all these things to me because I have a lot of his money. So he says, I
don't know if I want to go too deep on that question.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with rubber gloves and prostate. But anyways, I told him, why did I write this book? Because everyone asks me why I write this book, and I'm saying things, but it's not true. What I'm telling them, the reason why I wrote the book is not true, and I don't know why I wrote a book. I said, is it possible to write a book and not know why you wrote it? And then he explained to me that it wasn't unusual when you suffer a tragedy in your life like that to want to catalog your life. And so my life in 1,000 houses, failing forward to financial freedom, was how I was grieving. And part of what made that book work was I didn't give a crap, what anyone thought at that point. I was really upside down and hurting. And I told a really honest story about what happens after the Get Rich seminar, about what they didn't tell me and how I learned it and how I was figuring out to deal with it. And I actually had editors and everyone say, are you sure you want to put this book out? Because you make a lot of mistakes and you're falling down and you're making some really big, bad moves. And I said, well, it's the truth of what happened, so I'm just going to put it out. And honestly, I didn't give a crap because
I find that interesting because I think people want to hear about people's failures because it allows them to relate to them more, right? Because secretly everybody has tons of failures.
Well, that's what happened. That's why the book took off. That's how I got here as a coach and a mentor and an author. I didn't mean to be this. I I was inadvertently cataloging my life, trying to get over this bomb that had been dropped in my life. And I got over it through writing. The only thing I knew to write about was houses, because when you buy 150 houses a year is pretty much a 1-2-man show. There isn't anything else in your life. So when I was talking about my life, it was all getting related back to what I lived 24 hours a day. So it happened, but there was a lot of life lessons in there too, but there was always tied to something to real estate, because that's the way my life is.
Right.
We can be doing something, but it's always, if you follow the trail back even just a couple of steps, it's touching the real estate industry somehow.
I got a question for you. We have a lot of friends that do, a lot of deals and stuff like that. And I've had one of our friends say, I don't even like real estate. I do real estate, but I really don't even like it. And this is somebody that does a lot of deals. Do you, after all this time, do you love, I love real estate. Like my kids know. My kids have asked me, this is even sad, Mommy, do you love real estate more or us more? Yeah. That's usually when they're setting me up because they want something.
Julie, you just look them square in the eye and you tell them, I don't know yet. It depends on how many houses y'all are going to buy.
That's right. That's right. I remember rolling down the street when they were just in their car seats, because I have twins. I have twin girls. And the windows would be down. We'd be rolling around town and they would yell, there's one, Mommy. There's one. There's a good one. They're talking about ugly houses,
vacant
right?
houses. Yeah.
As we drive by.
The kids catch on faster than the adults, because it's just not that complicated, but as adults make it complicated. The kids they get it real quick.
But my question to you is, what do you love about real estate? Are you doing it because that's what worked after all the failures and you figured it out and it's working, and or are you passionate and enjoy it still every day? Or what part do you love? Personally, I fell into the coaching and I never thought I would have a podcast or coach anybody or do anything. And I don't even think about the money. I mean, and that sounds weird, but I just enjoy it. It's like having a whole new set of friends that like what I like to do. And of course, I want to make money at it, for sure. Don't get me wrong. But I also surprisingly found myself in a role of coaching and educating and all that stuff. And I never would have thought I would have had that skill set, and I love it.
Well, I think it goes through phases. And I think if you follow me here, I think you're going to agree with me 100%, because I think you're going through those phases too. So the first thing that we need is we need the money. And we're doing this for the money. We don't, right. Whether we like it or not, we're trying to find a way to separate ourselves from the rat race, right? So the first thing was doing money. Well, when I flipped a couple of houses or did my first couple of deals and I made $20,000 when I was making $35,000 a year at my job, 40 hours a week or 45 hours a week, I've always been overly responsible. So even if I had a job that was 8 hours a week, I always put in 10 because I give a crap. But so I start out like that. And then I'm all on fire with it, thinking I don't know if this window's going to change or when it's going to change. So I need to make as much as I can. So I'm running as hard as I can, doing as many of these deals, because certainly this is going to end somehow, some way. I need to get as much of it before the window closes as I can. And then you figure out that it's not going to end, that there's always another deal tomorrow, but you've kind of got yourself in this habit now of burning candles at both ends and stuffing, gorging yourself on houses. And so you go for a while, and then it becomes apparent that you can't keep running at that pace. And while you still like the industry and everything, you're starting to get really burned out. And so then there's this next challenge of how do you systematize this? And I tried 5 times to systematize it. Didn't work. I finally paid $30,000 to be in a mastermind group where there was 80 people that had already systematized and were buying way more houses than me, and they were never at the office. And then they taught me how to do that. And then so what happened was I'm not in love as much with real estate as I am with growing as a person. And real estate can take me through all these different phases. There's the phase where I was working in the business, and then there's the phase when I was doing everything but the sales, and I had hired that guy, and I'd grown up a little bit. And then I was hiring some acquisition managers, and I'd grown up a little bit more. And then I had a whole office and some staff, and I wasn't ever going into the office anymore. I haven't seen the last 300 houses I bought or the last 300 people that bought my houses. I have not. That's how I got here. I had some spare time. I had a lot of people call me. I thought, I got to do something, because here's the honest to God's truth. People say, well, if you're so independent, why are you still doing all this? And this is the honest to God's truth, Julie. A relatively energetic, not horrible looking 57-year-old man with a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of idle time is a recipe for friggin' disaster.
I hear that, yeah.
So I decided I was, after about 2 years of doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, I started looking at what I'm doing every day. I'm sitting around, I'm getting lazy, I'm getting fat, I'm starting to drink too much, I'm starting to smoke too much. It's like, man, I need to get engaged again. What am I going to do? And everyone keeps asking me, can you show me how you did that? And I keep saying no, and I just quit saying no. I started with exactly no expectations of coaching. And, I'm about to make well over $1 million this year in coaching. No expectations, nor did I really start my house business with expectations. My goal is to try and improve my systems and my companies and myself every day, every month. Just get better than you were last month. Yeah. And I see where let's see where it takes me. Well, it's taken me way beyond what I would have set my goals at. Maybe I'm a small thinker, but anyway, did I answer the question?
No, you did. You more than answered it. I've experienced a little bit of that myself, not necessarily probably as consistently and as long term as you have, but I've been around the block. I've been around a long time, and I've had $1 million wired to my account on several occasions. And what happens is that I find that if I'm not engaged fully in something, and I almost will do nothing. I used to be a big tennis player before I had my kids. My life, I loved tennis. And I always thought, man, if I had a whole bunch of money and could relax or do the 4-hour work week or whatever, Joe loves systems. So if it was up to him, we would roll where, everything's running and all our, employees or whoever else is running the show for us. And we continue to try and pursue that. It's always a challenge, especially in the market that we're in now, but, are coming out of, I guess I'll say. But I found that when I was feeling fat and happy like that, I didn't do shit, And so I think it takes a little, I think all entrepreneurs also have a fear of failure. And I definitely have drive in me just on the pure fear of failure. And it's not failure in anyone else's eyes. It's just, again, what I want to achieve for my personal self or my family or how I want to live my life. So I relate to you, brother. And God, I hope we get to hang out with you a little bit more sometime. Maybe we'll come visit you out in your neck of the woods or jump on one of your tours or something like that. But I'm going to jump in now. So here, we've pretty much summed it up, everybody who's listening. Mitch is a normal guy with all the troubles, and he's just like us. We're all the same. We're all, not perfect, and we all fail. And honestly, anybody who hasn't failed, I don't actually believe that they're actually able to succeed. I mean, we can talk about that till we're blue in the face on failure, how failing actually allows you to learn and grow and eventually succeed. But I'm going to move on. So, hey, Mitch, I know, you are a seller financing guy and a private money guy, but what is your number one favorite investment strategy? Is that buying distressed property with private money and then seller financing it to a new buyer? That's
an easy one. That's an easy one. My favorite strategy of all time, and I do believe it's one of the greatest strategies of all time, although everybody's got what they like, but I love buy it, don't fix it, owner finance it for double, and watch someone else go over budget rehabbing your collateral, making your deal stronger and stronger and stronger with every dollar they put in. Think about that strategy, Julie. You buy it, look, you can buy a house for $40,000 and then you put $20,000 into it. So now you got 60 into it. And now you got to owner finance it for 120. Or you could just buy it for 40 and don't do jack to it and owner finance it for 80. You're still doubling your money, but guess what? You didn't spend any time doing a rehab. You bought it one day, it was up for sale the next day. Bam. And then it eliminated all the risk because all the risk was in the rehab. I invented not very much in my life. I invented maybe two things. I invented the OFV, the owner finance value, which is as a value unto itself that we arrive at by backing into the rents. The general theory being that a person paying $1,000 rent would rather pay $1,000 to own. And then I invented this other end of the bumper sticker, which the beginning of the bumper sticker I didn't invent, which was, and you probably know the saying, you make your money when you buy. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I invented the other thing, and you lose it in the rehab. Well, when you don't do a rehab, you can't lose it. And everybody goes over budget in the rehab. How many people in the audience go over budget when you do a rehab? Raise your hand. Everybody who doesn't have their hand up is a liar, or you don't do any kind of stringent rehab at all. Because
you know
if you're
what,
doing
Buddy even raised his hand. This is our sidekick, Buddy, my my Labradoodle.
Golden Retriever. Yeah, he's raising his hand.
He
goes over budget.
Hand.
All right. So what I love is I owner finance it to the guy, and I say, it's probably going to take $20,000 to rehab this house. And the guy always says, no, I can do it for 10. No, I can do it for 10. And $25,000 later, he's struggling to find out to get the last 2,000 to finish up. I love it watching them go over budget instead of me. I bought the house for 40. They put 20 to 25 in it. They make it worth 100. They owe me 80. I mean, they make it worth 120 or whatever. I take all that time that most people spend on rehabs. I'm not saying that they don't ever rehab a house, because that's not true. There's houses that demand, or there's price ranges that people aren't going to go fix their own house. I have a rehab going every day of my life, but my favorite strategy of all time is buy it, don't fix it, put it up for sale right after the closing, like seconds after the closing, it's being posted for sale. Owner finances someone and watch them go over budget fixing up my collateral.
Right.
Piece of cake.
Do you ever get the house back, or how often do you get the house back? Meaning they failed.
All right. Are you talking about in general in my life when I owner finance houses? Last year I bought 88 houses. I usually buy about 100 houses a year, but it's very competitive right now. There's a guru on every corner. Everybody who watches Flip That House is at least a house flipper for one house until they figure out its work.
Right.
And so last year I only bought 88 houses. I wholesaled 2 of them. I retailed 24 of them, just because most of those houses I need to retail because someone in my organization needed a paycheck to make it another quarter. And so we could live to buy more houses. And then I owner financed 62 of them. Right now I collect on over 300 houses. My foreclosure rate is 0.08% right now, but we're in a good boom time.
Right.
I suspect in the recession it'll go up to 10 or 12%. But those numbers would have been higher, but because of my 22 years of experience and my 1,500 houses of experience, I have learned to vet my buyers a lot harder and demand so much more out of my buyers, including down payment. I averaged 12% down this year so far in the last 100 houses. 12%. So on a $100,000 house, I'm averaging 12,000 down. And I'm even throwing out some absurdly high down payments so it didn't skew the thing. You know what I mean? Sometimes I get 40,000 down on a $100,000 house. I just threw those out. I moved those out of the way because I didn't want to skew the truth. And so I'm going to say that I can keep it down to 8% even if we hit a recession right now. But the other thing is this owner finance strategy booms in the recession.
Right.
And what a business to be in when you do good in the good times and then in the recession you boom. That's like a dream come true.
What do you think we're headed towards a recession then?
We're always headed to a recession till we're in one. There's a cycle. So you're always headed to one. The question is it 10 years from now? 10 years from the last recession, or is it going to be 12 years or 15 years? The cycle history suggests that it's about every 12 years, give or take a couple. So depending on when you want to say the last recession ended, I don't think the last recession ended that long ago. I think we're probably 2005. I think we're probably 8 years into it. I think it ended I'm sorry. I think the recession started clearing up around 2012 to 2013, certainly by 2014. So we may only be 4 or 5 years out of the recession on this cycle.
Right.
The other thing that's really messing things up is the optimism that the current presidency brings to business. I think we would have already had a recession had things not gone the way they went, but the optimism that the business people take from this current administration may be pushing a recession out a long ways.
Interesting. So let me, it's funny that you say you don't, the rehab, like you like to skip the rehab. I don't know what houses cost in San Antonio, Texas, but out here in Seattle, I mean, you're paying, anywhere from, 250 to in the less desirable neighborhoods to, 550 to buy flip houses. You know what I mean? It's expensive out here.
Yeah. Let me address that. So the owner finance strategy works best when you can substitute the rent payment for a house payment, give or take $100. Like if a guy's paying $1,000 rent, then if you can buy houses where you can set them up that if they have a 10% down payment or better, you can move. They can use that same $1,000 to make a principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payment.
Right.
Okay, that happens in houses that are generally $150,000 or less.
Right.
And so that's the sweet spot for the owner finance strategy. However, there is a way to owner finance more expensive houses. And I'll tell you about a student I had in California who had a beautiful house 3 blocks from Berkeley University. Okay, 3 blocks from Berkeley. It's $1 million to. We got it appraised, or we figured it was worth $1.25 million. But then when the appraiser came out, it was a manufactured home. It just been disguised so well you couldn't tell. But it was still a manufactured home. So it knocked the price down to a mere $850,000. So she sells this. She says, I really don't want to take the cash because I'm just going to have to deploy it. I'd rather you think it's possible to own or finance? I said, sure. But on that level, we need a really solid down payment, maybe more than 10%. And I said, let's just wait and see, because I think the people that can afford that kind of house, I think there's also people with huge down payments. Long story short, we waited around. We passed on a lot of people with $50,000 down and $100,000 down. Well, someone showed up with $250,000 down. She financed $600,000 for 30 years at 7%. And so you can own or finance, and you may not believe it, but somewhere out in Seattle is someone who doesn't want to deal with a bank, who can't deal with a bank, has to move faster than the bank wants to move, and they will own or finance your house with 30, 40, 50% down. You just have to ask.
Right.
What's the population?
No, I get that on the buyer side for sure. But tell us about how to deal with it so you come across a property on the seller side, and then you're having to take that down, right? So you're taking it down, purchasing it, right? Mm-hmm. With private money, right?
The thing is with bigger risk, with more expensive houses comes bigger risk, but there's also bigger margins. There should be bigger margins. Where I get scared for people is they're taking down $650,000 houses because they're worth $750,000. That kind of scares me, because there's not enough margin for error there, and you have a big number that can rack up pretty fast in interest and fees and stuff.
I don't think we have any dodo birds that would do something like that. The only way I think somebody would do that is if they had they wholesaled it to a retail buyer, that they had a retail buyer lined up or something like that, and I agree, but I get people sending me wholesale deals every day of the week that expect me to jump on that margin. Of course I don't. But if I'm buying if the house is worth if the house is worth $750,000, I want to be buying this thing for around $400, maybe $450, or I'm moving on. Right. One of the reasons we need a lot of margin is because there's a lot of chances for things to happen, to us that we sometimes can't see or not counting on. People say, wow, you're greedy. You need all these big margins. I says, you have no idea what can happen to me. Let me tell you some of the things that have happened to me, Right. So let me ask you, though, in this past investment climate that we've been in, I don't know how it is out in San Antonio, but isn't it hard to find, with it being a seller's market these past few years, has that finding these huge spreads to work that program, isn't that been a little tougher? Or are you not?
That's been tougher. It's been tougher. That's why I bought 88 houses instead of 110 houses this year. But just because it's a hot market doesn't mean people aren't dying, getting sick, getting cancer, getting transferred, getting divorced, having health issues. I mean, you got to live where the chaos is. I understand the economy and it's a seller's market. And it's really beautiful for this large segment of people there. That's not where I'm hanging out. I'm hanging out where life sucks.
Right. So what where do you get your list from, or how do you develop your target list on your sellers?
Now, if I tell you that, I'd have to kill you.
Okay,
no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. One of the things that happens in a hot market is you have to get to lists sooner, and you have to get to the decision maker faster. So like, instead of getting lists where most of the people on that list are 60 or 90 days old, I'm trying to get the list where people are 1 or 2 days on the list. And then I'm trying to get to them within 2 days. So within 4 days, they hit the list in 2 days. I'm at their house sitting in their living room in 4 days. That's how I beat everybody. Right.
Speed to lead.
Mm-hmm.
Speed to lead. Okay.
Speed, and get off the beaten path. For one is, there's some lists that you can get that are way more difficult to get than other lists. If everyone can get a list real easy, then that list is generally no good to me. Right? I write it off. If everybody can get the foreclosure list on a certain day, then it's no good to me. I won't even mess with it. I'm looking for lists that are pretty difficult to find sometimes. Sometimes they're not even on the computer. You have to go down to the courthouse to find them. One of those might be writ of possession. I don't know what they call it in your town. It's also can be called a forceful entry and detainer. It's when there's been a foreclosure or there's been a eviction, and the judge has slammed the gavel and said you have 3 days to get out, and 3 days is come and gone, and they're still there and they're not leaving. You have to call the sheriff to kick in the door and drag them out and drag their stuff out on the curb. That's the worst experience that an investor or a owner financier can have. This deal has run the entire gamut, and I want to find out who filed writ of possessions. Now, I'm not looking for a writ of possession that when I kind of look into it, it's a person like Julie who owns a bunch of properties, because for Julie, it's just another day in the life for you. I'm looking for the guy who inherited his grandmother's house. He thought it'd be cool to put his brother in it. His brother never made any payments. He's 8 months behind. It's cost him a fortune to get this far, and the house is tore up now, and he doesn't have the money to fix it. I just want out of this crap. And that's the guy I'm looking for. And there may only be 15 or 20 of those per month in my city of 1.7 million, but they're not posted on the website. I have to go down to the courthouse and get in the file cabinet. And even that was a challenge, because when I went down there, they told me to shove off. So I showed up with my Freedom of Information Act, and they told me to shove off again. So then I had my lawyer go down there and show up with it and talk to the head guy in charge. And they asked me what days would I be coming to check their file cabinet.
Nice. I get what you're saying.
Lists that are easy to get are generally no good unless you can get on them the minute they're put out and discern who you need to talk to right away, the most optimal prospect, and get to them right away. But generally, I try to find lists that are very difficult to get. For another instance, who's red tagging the meters, the electrical meters? Now that's a really hard one to get, because it's meters? Not. Who's red tagging the electrical meter on the house? Got it. Who's assigned to pull the meters that they haven't paid in so long, or that the payer of the electric bill is such a problem they're going to go take the meter off the house? I want that list.
Right, you're going deep. Deep.
Yeah,
love it. I'm sure everybody here is enjoying. The thing is that it's not like everybody doesn't know that those are good lists. But you're right, nobody's going to go do it. It's a lot of work.
No, it's hard, and I've been trying to. It took me months to get to the guy who pulled the can and explain to him that he wasn't going to get in trouble if he would just drop me a line. And then he got promoted or left, and then I had to start over again. After a while, I still bought a lot of houses from it, though.
I like it.
But you're right. So I pick challenging lists to get, and I make sure that I get into it, and I hire. And if they don't want to give me the information, and I'm rightfully due for it, I go hire an attorney and I send them over to explain that if they don't give me the damn list, I'm going to sue them.
Right, because they have to, right?
Well, that's the whole thing between the Freedom of Information Act. Yeah,
Right.
they're supposed to, but they're government employees and they don't even know. You know more about what you're doing than they do. So it's just easier for them to try to blow you off until they finally figure out that you're serious and you get to their department head.
Right.
And then my attorney gets to their department head, and then the department head says, ho, 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 you guys need to straighten up here and show him to the file cabinet.
Right.
And then, of course, I'm not very well liked down there at that moment. But then the first week I come down to the file cabinet, I got tacos. And then the next week I got donuts. And, man, they love me. They can't wait for me to come look at that file cabinet again. And they're all weighing 300 pounds down there.
Nice. Well, we appreciate that insight. I mean, it's not like it's just interesting because, like I said, it's like we all know that that's the answer. But I don't know. I guess it's just, I think people don't do it out of fear. I think people are willing to work hard, but they're afraid to get a no. They're afraid for that person at the front desk to tell them no, or that, they're going to, I think people are afraid that their name's going to get on some blacklist, or, they're going to get in trouble somehow, or it's going to mess them up. So they refrain from, I know there's some people listening though that are going to go down and do that kind of stuff.
Well, but you asked me if I loved real estate. I'm not sure that I love the real estate anymore as much as I just love it's a game I play. Some people play video games. I play a little real estate game going, how deep can I drive down on some lists of some people that really need to sell me their house? I mean, right. I also like to tell people, they're playing video games all the time, and I see a lot of people that spend a lot of hours on video games. My God. They said, do you ever play video games? I said, yeah. I mean, I said, well, I don't really play like video games. I said, kind of, sort of. I play a game on the internet. It's called How Much Money Can I Make My Computer Crap? And it's called the Educational Sales Business. and I can tell when I'm doing good when a lot of money is going into my bank account.
Right.
And the rules are constantly changing, just like in your video game, except I get paid when I figure out how to get to the next level.
Right.
And then I was going to say one other thing. At my office, it is widely known that you don't even come to me and ask me for help until you've gotten at least 3 no's. And that means even try it one day. Call directory assistance if anyone does that anymore. You used to call directory assistance and ask for people's phone numbers. And they would say, we don't have a number for that person. And I'd hang up and I'd call right back. And they'd say, we don't have a number for that person. And I'd hang up and I'd call right back and they go, here's the number.
Yeah.
And I go, what the hell?
Well, it's the same premise as follow-up of your leads, right? You get a no, 8 times before you get a yes. It's sort of the same concept. We even call the people that told us to F off from 5 years ago are like great leads right now.
I just was going to say, we just bought a house from 4.5 years ago. The one before that was 2.5 years. And they're the ones that told us to get the hell out of their house. And one of the things that we do all the time is, even if they tell us to F off and get out of the house, we still go home and we type up a hard copy, put it in a envelope, and send it to them in the physical mail. Our offer, the one that they told us, the one that they were so insulted by. And it's amazing because they'll call us a year or 6 months or 8 months later and they'll say, and I'll remember, I think that's the guy that told me to get the hell out of his living room. I was really pissed. And so I'll go up to him and I say, what made you call me? Knowing in the back of my mind that he was that guy. And the answer is always the same. You're the only one that really sent a real contract.
Wow. Yeah. We get that, but it's more, we get it on a regular basis. Like I've had 40 of these investor contacts, but you're the only one that's been consistent about contacting me. So I'm going with you. We get that a lot,
Yeah, well, today, I have a company called Livecom, Livecomm.
I was going to ask you about that.
And it's expanding in its abilities every day, but the goal is that it'll do a voice drop, it'll send a text message, it'll remind your salesperson that there needs to be a personal call made, it'll remind the secretary that we need to send out physical piece of mail. And it's like a complete CRM that touches people in all these different ways, from personal phone call to voice drop to text to physical mail to email. And that's what I'm trying to bring it up to. Right now, what I use it for is to capture the incoming caller's cell phone number. For example, I only have like 9 days on the market on my owner financed homes, because I put 20 bandit signs around my house when it's for sale and one in the front yard. And then I assign a live comm number to each house. And then every time you call any of those numbers, you get a recording about that specific house on that specific number. And then I capture their cell phone number. So right now today, despite the fact that, LiveComm does have a pre-scheduling feature, and every first of the month I send everybody in my database a text that says, if you're no longer interested in an owner financed home, would you please reply with the word stop right now and get removed from this list. Despite the fact that I send that out on the first of every month, I have 8,236 people that want to get a text the next time I have an owner financed house come into my inventory. So that's
right.
That was the basis for starting LiveComm, but there's so many more things to do. And so one little function at a time, we are picking up on it.
And that's LIVECOMM, right?
COMM, yeah, like live communication, LIVECOMM.com. And if you just watch the video on the home page, you can go a long ways to seeing why I can sell. I never worry about selling my houses. Selling my houses is so easy. That's how I got my down payments up to 12%, and how I started finding such great buyers that my foreclosure rate's like 0.08 right now, is because I have people competing for my houses to owner finance. And one of the big questions is, well, who has the most down payment? But I don't always take the person with the most down payment. Sometimes I take the second highest down payment with a person that looks way more credible. And
well, let me ask you. So you've obviously, have the sales side down on finding the buyers who are going to buy your owner financed or seller financed houses. On the front end, when you're buying these houses, how are you doing it? Are you using private money from other investors like your doctor to take down these houses? Or are you just using, for the person that doesn't have $1 million in the bank, I know you're a private money guy as well. You do a lot of education about how to raise private money. Is that your MO, taking them down with private money?
Yeah, but it is now. But in the beginning, when I didn't have a reputation and I didn't have a track record, I bought my first 100 houses on credit cards. Now, I don't know if you can, but the houses here were cheap, so you have to understand. I was buying a house for, give me 10 grand on this credit card and 10 grand on this credit card. That would buy the house. Give me 10 grand on that credit card and that'll fix it. And then I'm going to sell it for $50,000 cash, and I'm going to pay off my credit cards and keep the 20. I did that 100 times in a row.
Right. But now that wouldn't work today. It certainly wouldn't work out here, and it doesn't work with hard money because it's too expensive and it's too short term. Right?
Well, it's really not true. It depends. You may have to partner up with somebody, or you may have to get them to carry the note for a little while, but you could give them 50 or 100,000 down off credit cards. I know credit card companies, 0%. There's companies out there right now that'll help you get up to $240,000 worth of 0% interest credit cards, or very low interest credit cards, if you have a 720 credit score or better.
Right.
And I've helped over 225 people get some of that money. So not all of them got all of it, but some of them really. Sometimes you just need 100 grand, because if you could give someone 100 grand to carry the note for 8 months and then you cash them out, you may solve your own problem. You make the seller finance you. 100,000 different ways to do it. Today I have $13 million worth of private money, 8% interest only, 5 years. Non-recourse, collateral only. And right now on my desk, I have $850,000 worth of deals I need to close, like right now, with another $250,000 house pending.
What are the terms that you're offering your buyer on the seller finance? What are
10%, 30 years fixed.
10%, 30 years fixed.
Mm-hmm.
But how many years is the loan term? Does it balloon?
No.
No. So you're keeping, I guess I'm saying you're keeping you're not cashing out of that deal, right? You have funds.
I can if I want, but I'm saying I have 5-year interest-only money sometime in the next 5 years, and it's non-recourse. It's collateral-only loan. I'm not signing personally or guaranteeing anything.
Right.
I'm just saying I'm either going to pay you or you can have this house. If this house isn't good enough for you to loan me $50,000 on, don't loan it to me, because I have a choice every day of my life to pay you or to bring you the deed on that house. And I'm going to hold my head high either way if you take this deal. So I usually borrow about 58%. So a $100,000 house, I'm borrowing $58,000. And so people see the value of that. Of course, I've never given a house back in my life. I've never defaulted on a payment. But I have the right to, and I explain that to them. So what happens is I borrow $50,000. I say I can get a house for 50, and I got to use my numbers. So I just understand the theory. $50,000 I can buy this house for all in. So I borrow 52, hardly over leveraging because the house is worth 100. And that happens quite often that I'm right around 50% loan to value, and that I can sell my house for, 100% over what I paid for it. So I borrow 52. The reason why I borrow the extra 2,000 is it cost me about $2,000 to find this person that sold me their house. And if I go around in 100 houses and leave $2,000 in 100 houses, I have $200,000 laying around. And if I do it 5 years in a row, I have $1 million laying around. Who's got $1 million to leave laying around? Not me. So I borrow the 50. So I borrow the 52. My interest only 8% payment is let's just say $350 for easy math, and then I owner finance it for 100 with 10,000 down. I put the 10,000 down in my pocket. That's my today's pay. I recouped my $2,000 when I borrowed the money for my advertising. So that money's like a non-issue. Once you have $2,000 to advertise with, you never need any more because it just keeps coming back. And I created an incoming payment of $850, but I got $350 going out. So I paid myself $12,000 to create $500 a month positive income, where I have no responsibility that a landlord has. I have no liabilities hardly. I'm just the bank. It's not my toilet. It's not my roof. It's not my hot water heater. I'm just responsible to get the payment. And once I receive that $850 and I pay the $350 to my lender that month, and I have that $550 cash flow in my hand, there's no place for it to go. If I was a landlord, I wouldn't know if I could spend that $500 or not, because if the air conditioner breaks tomorrow, apparently this money in my hand is the air conditioner man's money.
Right.
But because I don't own the house anymore, I sold it on payments. It's my money. And so the bottom line, people are always, doing things on paper. The bottom line on the owner financier's spreadsheet actually comes true. The bottom line on the landlord spreadsheet, you never know,
right? Because
it's floating.
What happens at the end of the 5 years with your interest-only money? You re-up with them, or?
Okay, but this is where wholesalers are making or killing themselves, though. Well, the average wholesale, I'm going to guess that the average wholesale, at least in my price range of houses around here, the average wholesale profits between $5,000 and $10,000. Well, I picked up $10,000 in my down payment.
Right.
But if I was a wholesaler, that'd be the end of the story. I still have 360 months where they owe me $500. That's $180,000 I'm still owed. That's the difference between making a good living and being a multi-millionaire, is that private money that I'm allowed to wrap. That my lender knows that I am going to sell the house on payments and not pay him off. He's agreed to it. That he's the underlying first lien, and that I'll sell it to someone in the second position, and that's how it's going to go for a while. Now,
well, why don't you tell our listeners what are wrappable mortgages so they just understand what you just said?
Okay, so I borrowed $52,000 to buy the house from my doctor, and I gave him a first lien position, and then I sold the house to my owner finance buyer, and that guy gave me $10,000 down and owes me $90,000 at 10%. So he pays me $850 to me, and I pay my underlying buyer. So the mortgage that I have on the house with my buyer wraps around the mortgage that my lender has with me. That's why it's called a wraparound mortgage. The $90,000 is wrapped around the $52,000.
Right.
So that's a wraparound mortgage. Now, if you go to my blog, 1000houses.com, and look up the article, Why I Borrow at the Terms I Do, I'll explain to you exactly why I chose 8% interest only, non-recourse, 5 years, collateral only loan. I'll also explain to you all the ways there are to get out of that potential train wreck, right? Where I got a note for 5 years, but my buyer has a note for 30 years. Where
can they go? We're going to push people over there. So where should they go? And they should all, you guys, this is such good information for you guys to know this stuff. I know many of you know who Mitch is, but where can they find that information again, Mitch? We're going to push everybody over there in case we.
Okay, the only reason I'm sending you there is I wrote like 6 pages on this, and I got it exactly right, and I could explain it all to you here, but it'd take me 45 minutes. You know what I mean? So the easiest thing to do is go to 1000houses.com, 1000houses.com, and go to the blog, click on the tab that says blog, and then look up the article that's titled Why I Borrow at the Terms I Do. But here's as bad as it gets. It's never happened, but this is as bad as it gets. If I get $12,000 up front and I collect $500 cash flow for 60 months, that's $30,000 plus $12,000. That's $42,000. And if I had to give the deed back to my lender at that point, which I have the right to do with no recourse to me, then I made $42,000 off that house over a 6-year period. That's as bad as it gets. Now, I've never done that because I know the minute I give a deed back to my lenders, they won't lend me any more money because they're doctors and lawyers or retired people or 80-year-old people. They don't know what to do with a house. They don't want to deal with a house. They just want their payment. But that's as bad as it could ever get for me.
Right. I mean, the key to the whole success of the thing, I mean, one big key is the terms of your underlying loan with your private money lender. Those terms rule the show, right? I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. So if I went 5 years and then I just had to give the deed away to my lender, I mean, it's still a great deal for me. I made $42,000. No one can sue me. I haven't signed a personal guarantee. Now, the downside of that is I'd probably lose my investor.
Right.
Maybe the investor would go sell the house for $100,000 and have a party. I don't know, and ask me to do it again. But how much are these houses going to be worth in 4 years or 5 years? Can you sell the note? Can you pledge your note as a loan at a community bank? You know, it's called hypothecating your note. I just hypothecated 35 notes. The people in the houses owed me $3.2 million. I borrowed $1.8 million from my private lenders, and the purchase price of my houses totaled $3.6 million. I just went to the bank and said, I want to borrow that 8%, $1.8 million that I borrowed from private people at 8%. I'd like to pledge my $3.2 million worth of notes and refinance that 1.8 for 4.5% and a 15-year amortized mortgage with a 10-year balloon. And they said yes.
Nice.
So there's a lot of ways to get out of this,
right?
Or to get through it. But what I want to point out mainly is that the wholesalers out there, you're leaving like $150,000 to $300,000 on the table every time you don't have the private money to carry a note.
You know, I think wholesaling is, to me, like, it's almost just like people start in. I think people find quickly or within a year or two that wholesaling is a job, and it's like the highest taxable income you could, you're not getting anywhere with wholesaling. It's a good way to get started and learn the ropes and learn how to talk to sellers and all that other stuff. But everybody needs to quickly move off that, or use that tool only when you need to. And expand your horizons as fast as possible beyond wholesaling.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who didn't really start wholesaling something. Everyone starts out wholesaling, especially if you have a spouse that's not on board, because I call it hush money. You got to do a couple of wholesales to get some money in the bank so you can tell your spouse to hush up now.
Well, let me ask you about a topic that's a big deal to you, and I know that you're probably involved in legislation and stuff, but what about Dodd-Frank? Why do we need to stay current on that topic, especially if they're rolling with any type of private money seller financing type of stuff? And how does Dodd-Frank affect your business right now, or how do you stay in compliance?
It's a real simple conversation. I just hire an RMELLO, or residential mortgage loan originator, we agree on a fee. They tell my people what they need to do and what order they need to do it in. and in what time frame they need to do it in, and we just comply. I can't even tell you what it is that they do. I just know that my RMLO's in control, and he's monitoring my people and making sure it's getting turned in the way it's supposed to, and I pay the fee. Now, I used to be able to owner finance houses with zero closing costs. Now I have to charge all my buyers fees because of Dodd-Frank. So Dodd-Frank was instituted to protect the consumer, but just like every consumer protection law, it ends up costing the consumer out the ass, and that's no different here.
And so what is the fee that you have to pay in RMLO? What type of fee are we talking about?
I think it's regulated, and I think it's maxed at $850, so somewhere $850 or less.
Okay.
And I used to have zero closing costs, and now I have $1,500 worth of closing costs, because if I have to spend $850 for carpet, I don't charge $850 extra for my house. I got to make a profit off of the upgrade. So, now my buyers have $1,500 worth of closing costs. Because if you're going to put me through all that hassle, make me do all that crap, and hire and spend more hours in my office, I got to make a profit on it.
How does somebody find an RMLO to work with?
Probably just go to your local real estate investment club and find out who's there. Because if there's an RMLO in your state or your city, they're going to the clubs to get business.
And so again, we got some newbies on the line and stuff today too. What exactly, so they know what is an RMLO? Can you spell it out just for a second?
Yeah. Residential mortgage loan originator. They are licensed to quote interest rates and terms and do qualifications, and they have all the paperwork, truth in lending, all the disclosures that you need that the government says that we need to give to be fair to our buyers and keep them aware of exactly what they're doing.
Could that just be somebody that is, works at the bank that's a loan originator or with a side hustle, or they probably have rules on that? Or is this person a full-time?
It's a full-time person that helps investors directly, and it's not the same as someone who helps you qualify for an FHA loan.
Got it.
A completely different set of requirements. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole different game. So
I gotcha.
That's the first tendency, is everyone just gets in there and asks for an RMLO. Well, most, 99% of the RMLOs out there are just people that help people get government government-backed loans. That's not what we're doing.
Right. We're getting close to needing to wrap up here, but I want to ask you, what do you think the hottest topic out in the real estate investor world is these days? What do you think? I mean, is it Airbnb, or is it, always obviously getting good lists, what we talked about, ninja lists and stuff like that is always an important topic. But what do you think is a big topic these days out there?
I think the biggest topics have to do with marketing, because essentially, when it all boils down, we're in the marketing business. Right.
That's why I love having a marketing partner, right?
Right. That's why you have him, because you know that.
Yep. Yes, I would agree. And I think that, that never changes, right? No matter how many years you've been in this business, marketing is the number one topic. I always tell people when they're getting started, don't watch videos about how to flip houses or wholesale houses or any of that stuff, because none of that matters unless you actually have a house. So you need to spend all your time, all your focus learning how to market and learning how to speak to sellers once you actually do some marketing. And then if you want to beat out all these big boys who are buying stuff for cash and, they are kind of one lane, one trick powerhouses, the way you can beat them, even if you're new, is to learn about creative real estate, creative financing, creative deal structuring. And if you can learn how to market and talk to sellers and learn about creative real estate, you can beat out anybody, no matter if you're new or old or whatever, right?
It's the equalizer. It's how and you can live off sometimes. I mean, that's what I did for years. I live off the big boys' crumbs. The things they didn't want, there was still enough margin for little old me.
Yeah. Hey, what do you think about the iBuyer thing? Zillow and OfferPad and Open Door and all the iBuyers, instant offers these days. What's your take on that?
I think they're going to go broke.
Yeah? Yeah. I mean, all they're doing is they are using it as a tool to get sellers to raise their hand, right? To say, I'm interested in selling. It's a hook. It's a hook, as I call it. You don't think there's some, why are these guys getting billions or millions of funding for these, like Open Door and these places? Are they in your market at all down there? I think they're
Open Door, Perch, all of them. They're just trying to mimic the investors We Buy Ugly Houses model.
Right. I mean, your approach again out trumps everyone. I mean, I think in regards to how you operate your business, again, if everybody's listening, we're back to how do you beat the big boys coming in the market, whatever they're doing. You learn about creative deal structuring, seller financing, and creative real estate. That's why it won't touch Mitch, right?
Well, it always has some effect, but the question is there still enough room for me to proliferate? And there is. And I just find things they're not doing and do them.
Right.
I can probably pick up their crumbs. You know what I mean? If I'll go study exactly what right now I don't need to because I'm fine. But if things get a little tight, I'll just go figure out what they're doing, and then I'll figure out what they're not doing, and I'll start doing that.
Well, what I find interesting is sometimes off those types of sites or whatever their action they're taking, if you study what they're doing, in some ways they tip you off to where the deals are, or you know what I mean? Just there's intel that can be gathered just by studying, like you said, what they're doing or not doing, or how they're identifying. I think that like Zillow, because we run our business in Las Vegas also, which might be more exciting for us with the seller financing because the prices are so much cheaper down there. But Zillow is not everybody down there qualifies for an instant offer, and it says it right on the Zillow site. If you qualify or not, if you plug in an address. I find that sort of interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to say this. I'm going to leave everybody dangling. We'll wrap it up. But there's actually ways that I can get the name. I can find every person who even searches their name.
Searches the name what? Zillow?
Anything. Home Investors, Zillow, Perch. Not Zillow, because that's not specific enough. I can get the information on the person who today went and searched Perch in San Antonio, Texas. I can get their name.
Okay, that is a dangler.
Yeah,
a dangler. Well, maybe you're gonna share more about it on all your podcasts and websites. So we are getting long here.
Sometimes
I
you
talk
save
to you forever,
Julie. Sometimes you save things for the top echelon people, because if everybody goes to piss in a pond, it'll just be a pond full of piss.
I hear you. I hear you. Hey, Joe, give me a shout out in the chat on what number we are on the podcast, so I know what's up, so I can tell people.
Joe's that's cool. Yeah, there it is.
Joe's out in the silence land.
45.
45.
Yeah, 45.
Number 45. So, Mitch, as we wrap it up here, where can everybody find you, engage with you further? Let's recap that one more time. If you are coming to Seattle Investors Club, which we all hope you will do, we meet the second Saturday of every month from 4 to 7 p.m. in Renton at the Renton Technical College. You can go on to seattleinvestorsclub.com and you can register an RSVP for the next event. And we'll tell you now that as we'll be dropping Mitch's podcast, whatever week that comes out, the SIC meeting that will be following that, we will be handing out and giving away a bunch of Mitch's books. So you guys want to make sure that you attend that meeting. And we're also going to be trying to arm wrestle and get Mitch out here to Seattle at some point in the next, 6 months or year, whenever we can get him out here. Would be awesome.
Just promise me some of that seafood. I'll be there like next week.
We got you. No problem. With that and coffee, we got you covered on. It's not a problem.
Okay. All right. So you can reach me at Mitch at 1000houses.com, Mitch at 1000houses.com. Watch my podcast at reinvestorsummit.com. That's probably good enough. Or you can go to my website, 1000houses.com, get a whole bunch of free stuff. There's always a way to connect with me. I'm not too hard to find.
Guys, this is a guy that we don't talk about much, as far as we don't talk to people that do what Mitch does. You need to have education from Mitch in your arsenal, in your tool belt. You need to learn exactly what he's doing and figure out how to apply that to yourself. I know that Joe and I will be jumping in on all this stuff with Mitch and listening as we have to his podcast and things going forward. So awesome, Mitch. Thanks for hanging with us today. If you guys want to get the show notes on this podcast, you can go to seattleinvestorsclub.com/45. This is normally the stuff that Joe says to you guys, so I'm probably going to screw it up a little bit, but that's the answer there. Of course, if you like this podcast and have enjoyed this, we would love to get a 5-star review from you guys so we can continue to get awesome guests like Mitch, high quality guests on our podcast.
I'd like to say, you guys, I can't tell you how important that 5-star review is. You might think it's kind of some kind of tiny little thing, but it's really important. If you like what's going on, please get the 5-star reviews, because that's how we can stay up above the surface and get some air.
Awesome.
It's a hard business, this podcasting and stuff, and your 5-star reviews make a tremendous amount of difference on how things go for us.
Awesome, Mitch. I appreciate that. So thanks, everybody. We're going to sign off now from Seattle and San Antonio and the Sweat Lodge of North Dakota.
South Dakota,
wherever he is, in the wind caves.
Tied to an ant pile.
Covered in honey
with a grizzly bear like 50 yards away, and he just needs to be able to run faster than the grizzly bear.
That's right. Well, Joe is shouting out here, "You rock, Mitch. Ha ha, true." Yeah, we'll see. It's my guy, Joe Bauer. If you guys want to follow Joe, of course, go on to any social media account and check out thefantasticlife.com and follow along with The Good Life.
All right, Joe. And Joe, I want to know what happens of what your vision is after you have some of those shrooms up there those Indians are feeding you, okay?
Well, that's right.
Right. At least, do they have a peace pipe at least? I heard that's pretty good too.
Yeah, Joe, we want to see some photos on The Fantastic Life of you eating shrooms and smoking a peace pipe. That's right. Right on, everybody. All right, Mitch. Thank you so much. We're getting ready to sign off. Peace out. Have a good week and a good month, everybody here, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks for listening to the Seattle Investors Club podcast. If you have questions that you'd like to have answered on the show, shoot us an email at info@seattleinvestorsclub.com. Now go out, take that action, and build that real estate business. Thanks for listening.